Does the sun hate my pale ass? Yes, it does, because it decided to be stormy today. Hey guys, it's Grace from Graceful Books, and I am back with another video. So today's video is going to be the first in what I hope becomes a series for me, which is called Tropes Gone Bad, and I'm going to either be talking about tropes that I personally love, that I think a book did poorly, and I'll do a deep dive into that, and then also I will talk about tropes that I personally don't like and why I personally don't like them, and you guys can kind of jump in on the subject and say why you do love them, or maybe tell me some things that I got wrong about a trope and so on and so forth. I don't know how many videos in this series I'll have, but this is definitely going to be the first, and hopefully I can actually keep up with it. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So today's video is actually going to be me talking about a trope that I personally love, where there is a specific book that I think executed it poorly. And before we dive into that, I'm just going to tell you guys that trope is enemies to lovers, which I feel like is a pretty well-loved and adored trope within the book reading community. So just to give some background, there's multiple different types of enemies to lovers. There's the enemies to lovers where I hate you because of the group that you're a part of. Essentially, that would be ones like Romeo and Juliet. Their families oppose each other, so as a result, the kids kind of are supposed to hate each other, but they don't necessarily hate each other. It's the same with Renegades by Marissa Meyer. Nova and Adrian are parts of different groups that oppose each other and dislike each other and have certain views about the other group, and that leads to the two main characters kind of having preconceptions about the others. And then we have enemies to lovers, where it's basically we have a past, we have a history where you fucked me over, and as a result, I currently don't like you, even if you've grown or changed as a person, which for me, I think that would possibly be Starflight by Melissa Landers. I might be getting the title wrong, but that would fall into that category because it's basically kids who went to high school together, they're grown-ups now, and they get into a situation where they kind of need to rely on each other, and when they, in high school, did not get along at all. So that's the type of enemies to lovers that's in that one. And then we have ones where there's royal aspects, so it's like a power dynamic as well. So the royal aspects and power dynamic ones kind of fall hand in hand. There's one with the Winter's Curse and the Captive Prince, as well as An Ember in the Ashes, where the two main characters, one of them is at a lower level, either they're a slave or they're a servant, or they're just at a lower power dynamic than the other one, who is either royalty or part of the ruling group and things along those lines. There's more enemies to lovers on top of that. There's ones where it's like, I've been around you so long, I've known you for so long that I basically cannot stand you, and that would be You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogel. There's multiple different subsets of enemies to lovers is my point, and I feel like one of the books that I strongly dislike because I feel like it butchered my favorite trope is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Now, I have so many thoughts on this book, and just be aware that this will be spoilery filled. I feel like a good chunk of people have read The Cruel Prince, so I hope that this doesn't spoil anything for anyone, but just be aware there will be spoilers in this video because I have to address specific things that happen in The Cruel Prince to tell you and dissect why I think it did a poor job of doing enemies to lovers. So, if you know nothing about The Cruel Prince, it basically follows a young girl named Jude. She's human, and her sisters, they witness their parents get killed by a fae, and that fae decides to take them to his world to raise them as his own. And basically, fae do not like humans. So I'll get into that in a second. But fae basically do not like humans. They kind of see them as lowly and weak and things like that. And so they have the tendency to torment Jude and her twin sister, and it's just not a good time. And then on top of that, Jude wants to get into a position of power in the fae world, and she has an arch nemesis named Cardan, who is one of the prince fae in this world. And let me just say, I'm going to kind of tell you guys what I think are parts that add to enemies to lovers, if that makes any sense, and then kind of tell you why I think it didn't work in this specifically, and maybe give you examples from books that I personally loved with enemies to lovers. So the first thing is that I think there needs to be a good reason for there to be tension between the characters. I personally really, really hate it if the reason that there's tension is really, really stupid and there's really no background to it at all. Basically, in this, what is explained is that Jude doesn't hate Faze. From what I gathered, she doesn't hate Faze. She hates the power dynamic between her and like Faze in this world, but she doesn't necessarily hate Faze. She actually wants to kind of fit in with them, and I personally don't understand that need, but whatever. She wants to fit in with them. She basically just hates Cardan. To hate Cardan. I really don't know what to say in that regard, because Jude disliking Cardan, there are people in this world that make her life way worse than Cardan does. Like, Cardan's friends, for example, basically torment the fuck out of Jude the entire book. And Cardan, while not necessarily being an angel or anything, he basically just stands back and watches it all happen, and then maybe takes advantage of it here and there. So he's not an angel by any means. I'm not saying he's a good character. I'm not saying he's a good fae thing, tail, animal, whatever. So I really don't understand why she hates him the most out of everyone in this world, because they basically all treat her like shit, and other people treat her way worse than Cardan does. And for some reason, she has this big, massive beef with Cardan specifically, which makes no sense. The worst thing I can remember him doing to her is kicking dirt onto her food. You heard me right. Something that a childhood bully would do and think is funny and mean. That's what he did to her. The other stuff was way more twisted and way more fucked up. And those things were done by his friends, not by Cardan. So Jude's visceral hatred of Cardan really does not make sense if you think about it. I can understand her disliking him and not being a big fan of him, but she hates him so, so much, and she mentions it like every other sentence, how awful he is, how much he sucks, how horrible he is. And we really don't see why he's so horrible. We see why maybe he's not a cool person, and maybe why you want to avoid him and not be around him and shit like that, and why you would not want to associate with him. But you don't really see why she actually hates him the way that she hates him. Like, her level of hatred for his actions is way overdone and way overblown. So her hatred for him does not make much sense. And then on top of it, Cardan and fairies in general don't like humans, and I personally, even after reading two of these books, after reading two of these books, don't understand why they hate humans. I guess it's because they're weak, which, wow, great reason. I don't know. The reasoning is so stupid to me. There's really no reason for the tension between Cardan and Jude to be as severe as it is, and as severe as Black writes it to be. So there's that. And on top of that, later on, it's revealed that Cardan hates Jude because of jealousy. I don't even know where to begin with that bullshit. But, you know. Moving on. The next thing is that I feel like there needs to be tension buildup and scenes for the main characters to actually kind of bond and understand that, hey, maybe this person that I've hated for this long actually isn't that bad. And there were so many moments in this book specifically where I feel like tension could have been built up properly. Like, there could have been scenes that maybe seemed little in the moment, but actually helped you see more of Cardan's character as well as more of Jude's character. There's one specific moment in this book that I remember very clearly, and I remember getting so aggravated by it, because I thought for a moment we were actually going to have a scene where we kind of see their tension and their hatred in action, but kind of also see possible admiration, and that didn't happen. So basically, there is this weird thing where they fight with wooden swords at, like, school. It's like an event, and there's teams, and they kind of fight each other. Pardon me if I'm getting this wrong. It's been a hot minute since I've read this book. But they, like, fight each other, and Jude practiced for this for so long. So long. And this whole time, I was like, okay, so maybe we're gonna actually see her and Cardan, like, fight. And, like, maybe there's gonna be, like, this tense moment between them. and like, or he's gonna have like a flicker of like vulnerability during this moment, or she is, and it was just like I was prepared for that. And you know what? We skipped over that entire thing. Like literally, we get little footnotes basically for that. We get no real tension build up, no possible moment for connection, no possible hint for what could possibly be a softer side to Cardan, and things along those lines. That moment was completely squandered, and it pissed me off. Because in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, we're finally going to get like a moment, and it didn't happen. And I was pissed, because I was like, that could have been a good moment for build-up. For example, there are multiple moments in Renegades by Marissa Meyer where Nova and Adrian butt heads. And Nova, in that moment, is kind of, her identity is not revealed to Adrian. So Adrian has no idea that she's part of the opposing group that he's a part of. And there are multiple moments where he says things that a typical renegade would say. Like, anarchists are bad, or something along those lines, or they need to be eradicated, things like that. And don't quote me on that, he probably didn't actually say that. But he'll say things like that, and Nova will challenge it. Like, she'll straight up challenge it. She doesn't give a fuck. She doesn't care if he'll figure out that she's part of the anarchists or anything like that. She'll challenge it. And it's this moment of, like, tension. You're like, oh my gosh, he's going to realize that she's not part of them. But no, it ends up being like this moment where you hear them kind of go back and forth without really getting nasty or anything, and kind of seeing both of the characters' perspectives. And it kind of humanizes both of them as well. And that's such a nice thing. It helped ease into this tension buildup, as well as give both of the characters kind of a connection that seems a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more sweet, and a little bit more personal. And that was completely skipped over in The Cruel Prince. Until the very end, where it's also poorly done, but we'll get into that again. So yeah, I guess another one would be scenes meant to connect them, which could also be part of what I just talked about, but there are multiple moments where basically the power dynamic is flipped. Cardan gets kidnapped by Jude after his family is massacred, essentially, and I'm pretty sure Jude, if I remember correctly, Jude doesn't necessarily have a part to play in that. She's just the one who kidnaps him, and is like, this is my chance to take him prisoner. Bum bum, after he kicked dirt into my sandwich. Yes. It's just so stupid, her reason for hating him, in my opinion, but that just might be me, you know, whatever. So anyways, she ends up like kidnapping him, and as a result, he's basically her prisoner, which now the power dynamic is switched, and I feel like in moments like that, there's opportunity for there to be a connection, a sense of vulnerability coming from Cardan that he wasn't able to show because he always had to put up a facade because he's in this position of power and he kind of has to come across a certain way, like he doesn't give a fuck. And the moments where this could have happened were done so poorly, and they were so fucking cheesy. Let me just see if I can find... Okay. So... Okay. I think it's this one. You're going to shoot me, he blinks. Right now? My finger caresses the trigger. I feel calm, gloriously calm. This is weakness, to put fear above ambition, above family, above love, but it feels good. It feels like being powerful. I can see why you'd want to, he says, as though reading my face and coming to some decision. But I'd really prefer if you didn't. Then you shouldn't have smirked at me constantly. You think I'm going to stand being mocked here? Here? Now? You still so sure you're better than me? My voice shakes a little, and I hate him even more for it. I have trained every day to be dangerous, and he is entirely in my power, yet I'm the one who is afraid. Fearing him is a habit I could break with a bolt to his heart. He holds up his hands in protest, long bared fingers splayed. I am the one with the royal ring. I'm nervous, he says. I smile a lot when I'm nervous. I can't help it. This is not at all what I expected him to say. I lower the crossbow momentarily. He keeps talking, as though he doesn't want to leave me too much time to think. You are terrifying. Nearly my whole family is dead, and while they never had much love for me, I don't want to join them. I spent all night worrying what you're going to do, and I know exactly what I deserve. I have a reason to be nervous. He's talking to me as though we're friends instead of enemies. It works too. I relax a little. I don't... He's saying he fears you. He's saying he fears you. And that's him talking to you like he's your friend. Like he views you as a friend. I personally don't believe it. That's the weakest bullshit ever. And then on top of that, it's just like, I really hate the "you are terrifying" thing. Jude is not terrifying. She is like laughable, in my opinion. She really did nothing in the moments leading up to this scene. Like, literally, she did nothing but take a drunken guy and put handcuffs on him. And hold a crossbow up to him. Okay? Yeah. And then I just absolutely hate the fact that she says he's talking to me as though we're friends instead of enemies. It's like Holly Black is trying to force you into thinking that this is supposed to be an intimate moment that connects them. No, it's not. It's genuinely not. He's being held hostage. Of course he's gonna fucking say shit like that. Like, it's not romantic in the least. It's not cute in the least. It doesn't bring any emotions to the surface. And it doesn't make me sympathize with him anymore than any other part in this book did. And, like, I get annoyed with Jude for reading that as, oh, he's talking to me like he's my friend. Not like he's scared out of his mind of me. Is that how your friends talk to you? Do your friends tell you that they're scared of you? That they're terrified of you? Because if they do, that's not a good sign. That usually means they don't view you as a friend. They view you as an enemy. They're terrified of you. I just don't understand how Black took that line and tried to make it sound like it was an intimate moment where we're supposed to be like, they're connecting. I am so sorry. I'm trying not to be, like, nasty in this, but, like, I just don't understand. Okay, so the next moment is, like, where he reveals why he actually hates her. And I think she kind of reveals why she hates him, too. Okay, so, very well, he fixes me with a spiteful look. I hate you because your father loves you even though you're a human brat born to his unfaithful wife, while mine never cared for me, though I am a prince of fairy. I hate you because you don't have a brother who beats you, and I hate you because Locke used you and your sister to make Nicasia cry after he stole her from me. Besides which, after the tournament, Bale can never fail to throw you in my face with a mortal who could best me. I didn't think Balekin even knew who I was. We stare at each other across the desk, lounging in the chair. Cardan looks every bit wicked prince. I wonder if he expects me to be shot. Is that all? I demand. Because it's ridiculous. You can't be jealous of me. You don't have to live at the sufferance of the same person who murdered your parents. You don't have to stay angry because if you don't, there's a bottomless well of fear ready to open up under you. I stopped speaking abruptly, surprised at myself. I said I wasn't going to be charmed, but I let him trick me into opening up to him. As I think that, Cardan's smile turns into a more familiar sneer. Oh, really? I don't know about being angry. I don't know about being afraid. You're not the one bargaining for your life. That's really why you hate me? I demand. Only that? There's no better reason? For a moment, I think he's ignoring me, but then I realize he's not answering because he can't lie, and he doesn't want to tell me the truth. Well, I say, lifting the crossbow again, glad to have a reason to reassert my position as the person in charge. Tell me! He leans in and closes his eyes. Most of all, I hate you because I think of you. Often. It's disgusting, and I can't stop. I am shocked into silence. Maybe you should shoot me after all, he says, covering his face with one long finger. If you listened to that and did not cringe once, I'm proud of you. You're stronger than me, because I could not. I just absolutely hate this reasoning for why there's tension between them, why he hates her. And that leads me into another point, but hold on. I know that I should be bringing up a point from another book and being like, this scene was meant to connect them and so on and so forth. If you talk about, like, Gemina in regards to this, essentially, there's multiple moments in that where Nick and Hannah have these moments where they basically at the start of the book butt heads constantly, but they're friends, but they butt heads constantly. And, like, one of them's pining for the other one, and the other one's like, fuck off, you bitch. And basically, we have these moments where they're basically like, fuck off, like, you're the last person I'd want to be with, whatever, whatever. It's not really enemies to lovers. It's more like dislike to lovers, not interested in you to lovers type of thing. But there's a lot of moments in that where Nick and Hannah have reasons to kind of bond and get closer. One is because their lives are in mortal danger, and two, they're basically the people on the ship that can kind of help things. And so there's a lot of moments where they kind of have to rely on each other to get through this shit. And as a result, those scenes are very subtle, but they're a way for you to find a connection between the two characters and kind of start seeing them as an item and as a thing together. And it's just moments like that I feel like should be subtle. This felt very thrown in your face, like, the book is ending, now we need to have them, like, fall in love with each other very rapidly fall in love with each other. Because there's, like, this moment where they just kiss. Like, it's very, very sudden. I feel like there's no build-up to it, and they're just suddenly making out. And it's like, okay, where the fuck did this come from? Because none of this shit was believable. None of the build-up to that moment was believable by any means. Point blank, period. None of it was. And it was so fucking ridiculous when they kissed. I was like, no. Backtrack. Erase the cringy lines and actually give me some real decent build-up. And then maybe I'll believe it. But it was so sudden and so abrupt because there was really no scenes meant to connect them and meant to make you sympathize with him in particular, that it felt kind of just flat. But the moments in Gemina lead you to kind of see Nick and Hannah as a team by the end of the second book. So it's aggravating to read this and be like, really? Where did this come from? This is so cheesy. This is so poorly done. It's just not good. So then the other reason that I have, like, a major issue with this is that the reason you're supposed to sympathize with Cardan is so cliched and overdone and honestly kind of harmful. Basically, Cardan is abused by his big brother. And don't get me wrong, abuse does happen, and it does change you. It's trauma. It changes the way your brain functions if you've been abused at any point in your life. It changes the way you function and the way you view the world. But there's a misconception that a lot of times when you're abused, you kind of become abusive yourself. That is a very small percentage. There's still a percent of people that do, but it's a small percentage. And I feel like this kind of perpetuates the idea that if you've been abused, you're going to be nasty, which is not the case. I mean, obviously there are some people who have been abused, and as a result, they can't cope with it, and they kind of lash out at the world, which is understandable. They've been through a trauma, and you can't expect people to cope with trauma well, if that makes any sense. But in this one, I felt like it was just a massive cop-out. Like, Holly Black could not come up with a good enough reason for us to sympathize with Cardan and feel bad for him. So she was like, okay, I'll throw in a scene where he's abused. Come on. Like, listen to me. Listen here. I understand that this is a thing, and I understand that it does happen in some other books. It's not just this one. But I can't remember the last time I read a book where a main character was abused and as a result is kind of nasty as a result of that. I personally think that stereotype is kind of harmful. I understand that it does sometimes happen in real life, but I do feel like it's also kind of harmful to have that perpetuated through this book. And I know that that's probably a really unpopular opinion, but I'm just putting it out there. And who knows, maybe I'll come across a book where that is the case and I actually don't mind it. But personally, I don't like the idea of someone who's being abused becoming an abuser as a result of it. The only time it really makes sense is if there's a lot of trauma as a result of that, and their brain chemistry really is kind of changed permanently to the point of the way they're thinking, their thought processes are not orderly, and do not connect properly. I really don't know the science behind trauma and what it does to your brain, but I do know that it does affect your brain and it changes the way you think. So I understand that, but the thing is, Cardan seems pretty normal besides the drinking problem. And the fact that he hates humans the way every other fairy hates humans. So, like, honestly, I hate the reason that we're supposed to sympathize with him is that he's been abused by his brother. It also perpetuates this idea that if someone's been abused and they're a dick to you, that gives them a pass. And it doesn't. It genuinely doesn't. It doesn't. And I'm speaking from a lot of personal experience on this subject matter, by the way, so I'm not just, like, talking out my ass. I'm talking from personal experience. If someone's been abused and they're using that as a reason or a cop-out to why they can treat you like crap, that's not okay. You deserve better. Tell them you deserve better and that the way they're behaving, they need help. They need help. They need to seek help. They need to get better. They need to find a way to cope and better the way they interact with people and better the way they treat people. Because otherwise, it's just going to end up a cycle, and it's not a good thing. But I just get aggravated. I feel like I'm going in circles with this. I'm sorry, but, like, I'm very passionate about the subject matter of abuse, and I just not the biggest fan of the way it was handled in this and the way it was represented. To put it simply, I just don't think it's a good enough reason for us to sympathize with Cardan because he's a shithead. He's a shithead. And I'm not going to like him suddenly because he was abused. He's still a shithead. Yes, he has trauma that he needs to work through. I'll admit that. But he's a shithead. I'm not going to suddenly be like, oh, I love you because you've been through such awful things. No. That just feels manipulative to be like, feel bad for me and love me because I've been hurt so tragically, but I'm a dick. But love me still, please. I hate that. I hate that so fucking much. And odds are I do have books that are kind of like that I personally love, like The Captive Prince. I feel like Prince Laurent is a good example of this. And I'm sorry if I'm spoiling anything, but I feel like that series is controversial enough that if you've read it by now. If you wanted to read it, you've read it by now, and you understand where I'm coming from. But there's characters like that where their tragic background really does kind of give you more of an idea of why they think the way they think and why they behave the way they behave. Cardan, to me, just... The issue is, it's not believable, because every other fairy in this world has a superiority complex. It's not just him. But he's supposed to have more of a superiority complex because he's in this position where he's supposed to be powerful, but he's not treated like he's powerful because he's basically abused, he's treated like crap, and he's basically drunk all the fucking time. And I understand what Holly Black was trying to do. I really do, but I just don't at the same time because basically every other fairy in this world is the same way. They have this superiority complex when it comes to humans, and they treat them like shit because of it. They think they're more powerful, more cool because of it. And I get that we're supposed to have more depth with Cardan as a result of knowing that he's been abused and he's basically treated like shit. But it really doesn't add depth to him, in my opinion. It feels like such a massive cop-out in a way for us to sympathize with him, even though he's kind of cowardly and shitty in general throughout the whole entire book. I do think matters with this series get better as the series goes on. I personally enjoyed the second book a lot more than the first one. I haven't finished it, though. I'm hoping to finish it this year. But just so you guys know that's like my personal opinion. I think a lot of the way the enemies to lovers was handled in this was done poorly. And I just wanted to get it out there why I think it was done badly. And if you guys have any more to add to that, feel free to down below in the comments. If you guys want to point out something that I messed up on, feel free to do the same thing. If you disagree with me too, that's fine too. Just tell me down below why you disagree with me. And also, if possible, give me some recommendations of enemies to lovers or for books with tropes that you personally really love, and tell me the trope too, so I can do a deep dive into some other tropes. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome day, and bye.